ready to go. Okay. Good evening. It's 6:30, and I'm going to call to order the special session of the Planning and Zoning Commission. We do have a quorum present. The item on the agenda tonight is a public hearing. It's a continued public hearing to consider amending Article 7, uses, parking requirements, supplemental use regulations, and certain distance requirements of the Louisville Unified Development Code to add supplemental standards for multifamily dwellings on certain streets in the Old Town Mixed Use 2 and Old Town Center zoning districts by adding section 7.3.22, establishing supplemental use regulations for multifamily dwellings, and amending Exhibit 7.2-3, mixed use zoning districts, to add a reference to these supplemental use requirements.
Good evening, Commissioners, and thank you for being here at this special called meeting for this second public hearing on this topic. The reason that staff has brought this before you is because we do have a lot of demand for multifamily development in the Old Town area. We want to make sure that as this multifamily develops, as it's allowed by right, that we're reserving space for commercial development in the future as the commercial market continues to develop over the next several years. What we're proposing tonight is a set of standards that would apply to all multifamily development zoned Old Town Mixed Use 2 or Old Town Center that are located on Main Street, Mill Street, Church Street, or Charles Street. These standards would require that the first 24 feet of depth along the ground floor be built to what's considered a retail-ready standard. That retail-ready standard will require a ceiling height of no less than 12 feet, that there would be a 1-hour firewall separating the areas that are residential from the areas that are designed to accommodate commercial use, that the exterior ground floor architecture reflect a vernacular commercial storefront per the Old Town Design Guidelines. A letter of design approval is required from the Old Town Design Review Committee, and that's how that would be enforced. That there's space provided for future signage on the exterior of the building, that there's access to the area designed to accommodate the non-residential uses that meets all accessibility standards at the time of construction, as it's different for commercial than it is for residential. And the grading and pavement from the sidewalk to the door is something that's very difficult to change at a future date. We're also adding a standard that there must be access to either a trash compactor or an additional 9 by 9 foot concrete space for additional trash receptacles. And that the ground floor uses devices so that residential units could be combined to create a larger commercial space in the future, whether that's through using a podium construction method or an alternative of girders or beams that would allow the walls that are separating the residential units to not be structural load-bearing walls. They could provide any other alternative to the planning director for approval that might meet that standard to create a minimum 1,400 square foot space, which is a typical combination of 2 dwelling units. In response to Commissioner Ryan Conway's comments, we have added a 9th standard, or an 8th standard, excuse me, and that's that post-tension foundation design shall not be allowed in the interior slabs for areas designated to accommodate non-residential uses. And what that does is it allows a slab that can be drilled through, so if additional utility connections are required, you can actually cut through that slab. It's not post-tension, which prevents that. And we felt that that was an important thing to add. He had also made comments related to electric capacity and plumbing. In discussing that with our building services team, they believed that all of that would have to be redone, and they were not concerned about general capacity at the transformer boxes not being sufficient. And they were also not concerned about plumbing as long as there was the ability to put to drill through the slab. So our recommendation to you tonight is a little bit changed from the backup. It's to recommend approval as drafted with the additional standard that post-tension foundation design shall not be allowed in the interior slabs for areas designated to accommodate non-residential uses. I will say since the second round of letters went out, we did receive a handful of phone calls, mostly people curious to what the changes were. I didn't receive any objection, just inquiry about the changes. And staff is here if you have any questions.
Okay, thank you. Commissioners, before I continue the public hearing, do you have any questions for staff or any discussion? No? Okay. At this time, I'm going to continue and open the public hearing. And anyone wishing to speak on this item, please come forward, state your name, sign in, and we'd be happy to hear from you. Having no one come forward, I'll go ahead now and close the public hearing. Commissioners, if there is no additional discussion or anything, may I have a motion, please?
Move to approve with the additional standards stated.
Motion is by Karen.
Second.
Second by Francis. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion passes 4-0.
This item will be considered by the City Council at a second public hearing, and they'll be making a final decision on Monday, March the 20th, 2023 at 7:00 p.m.
Thank you, Richard. Okay, the final item on the